Hands up who wants to be ruled. Etymology of the word is from the Greek, ancient Greek, and prefix meaning without, and archon, rulers. To me, it's a bit like the word feminism. Once you understand what it means, it's very difficult to have any objection. You look, who's the ultimate authority, for example, in America? We probably look to the president, or maybe we wouldn't. At the moment, this has never been more relevant. As Emma Goldman said, anarchism represents to the unthinking what the proverbial bad man does to the child, a black monster bent on swallowing everything. In short, destruction and violence. Destruction and violence. How is the ordinary man to know the most violent element in society is ignorance? That is the power of its power of destruction is the very thing anarchism is combating. Now, I'll tell you somebody who doesn't really agree with the idea of rulers, and that's most of the animal kingdom. Now, if you try to explain to a zebra, no, the lion is better than you. He's higher on the pyramidal, food chain, and he has every right to eat you. They don't accept it. So if a lion is running after a zebra, they have various techniques. They work in cooperation, because cooperation comes naturally, especially to most mammals, and they will work in cooperation to evade the lion, who they do not feel has any right on that particular day to make a meal out of them. And if the zebra gets the chance, when being pursued by lions, if they kick that lion in the head, there's a very high chance the lion will die. Because, as I say again, the zebra does not believe in hierarchy, does not believe in the lion's innate right to rule. So nature does not believe in the things that we project onto nature about how it's all red in tooth and claw, and most of the time, we see on David Attenborough, we see the violence and sex and violence. We consider that animals are pretty much at that all the time. Actually, most of the time they're cooperating or sleeping, or maybe digesting. Yes, there is competition. Yes, there is fighting, but mostly there's some sort of concord in that they kind of accept that another animal within their own society has dominance for whatever reason. Right. So in the case of ants, it's not all cooperation or competition, and it's not always deferring to him or her who is higher in some sort of hierarchy than you, because many ants, if they sort of meet each other, they will exchange signals with antennae, and if one of them has a full crop and the other one is hungry, then they'll immediately spit out, regurgitate some liquid, which is then eaten up by the other ant, and they can cooperate. You couldn't legislate as well as animals perform cooperation. So ultimately, you kind of either, yes, we are given that everything is all about competition, largely by Darwin, but more so by Darwinists, because Darwinists tend to be more hardcore, and they tend to be more right-wing very often than even Darwin. And Darwin was. And he was all for genocide and suggested perhaps one day there'd be a big battle between white people and black people. And he decided that white people would most likely win, but that there might be a time in the future when there evolved, a higher form of life than white people. Okay, so the idea is that there was set out in a book by what's his name, Peter Krapop. Oh God, I knew I could saying it right away. Anyway, this guy, and he said that the book is called Mutual Aid. Okay, so it sets out how animals are innately cooperative, and how Darwin sort of fails to include this sort of fundamental part of human nature and animal nature, and nature as a whole. But there's some sort of cooperative thing going on that seems to facilitate life, and one of the another example of how this is kind of innate is the Akana tribe members in South America, and there was an anthropologist who went and lived with them for a while, and she studied them. I think she was out there to facilitate some mining thing or something, to take photographs, but she ended up studying these people and living alongside them and so on. And what she found was they were kind of the opposite of the Spartans. We say about the Spartans that they were admired by many and copied by few. It's largely because the children, if they were found to be at all defective in any way, they're left out on the sort of mountainside for to be picked off by carrion animals. The whole thing with the Yukana is that they don't have any, within their society, they don't have any violence at all, none. So they don't really fall out with surrounding tribes, and they pretty much keep themselves to themselves. There was one instance, and they're not complete isolationists, as in there was a family which came from a city and stayed with them. That's sort of related to some of the people that lived there. And one of the children actually hit another child. And the Kana were just sort of there. What do you do? So they didn't do anything. They didn't stop. They didn't. What could they do? Their own children don't hit and hurt each other because they're brought up with this feeling that life is good. Life looks pretty good, and that the innate thing is still intact. That it's not about conflict and competition, but life is all about cooperation. And so from this woman who went there, the anthropologist, wrote a book called The Continuum Concept, which is a classic in the care of children still, and is said to have sparked off the old attachment parenting phenomenon. So when you see people walking around with slings, their babies in slings, this is because of the Yukana tribe, and they are the closest thing, according to Jean Ladloff, to an anarchist civilization, if you will, society. So yes, anarchism is a thing, and anarchy has always been where, before feudal times, and continuing and contemporary, because it's contemporary. It's not just Stone Age. It's contemporary. It's happening now. They're still succeeding, and they're succeeding in such a way that they don't have violence. They don't have any violence. There's no male or female violence. There's no child-to-child violence. There's no adult-to-child violence. There's no sort of playpens, and there's no cutting people off. The children are carried around sort of pretty much 24 hours a day. Sleep with their mums, carried by, if not their mums, then somebody else. And so that the continual contact has various effects on the prefrontal lobe, and it means that the emotional intelligence is extremely high. So what they may lack in technological advancement, planes or whatever, you could argue they make up for in that there's such a deep feeling of security that why would you ever hit somebody? Right, so one of the things that always gets me when people talk about anarchism and they don't quite understand what anarchy is or how it works or what it does or what it's for is, they kind of think of Marxism and they think about a very, very strict delineation of how everything's supposed to be, and they think that anarchy is the same thing. Well, no, it's not, because anarchy, if anything, is kind of a committee-based sort of way of living. So, people are allowed to associate with whoever they wish to. They're allowed to form whatever kind of agreements they wish to form with others, and and so things are discussed. And so if anything, it's not just anyone just does what the hell they want. It's more that yes, you do absolutely what the hell you want, so long as it doesn't impose on another. So that's a key thing. As long as you're not ruling over somebody else, like these dogs, quite brilliant that they can run around. That's great, unless it imposes on someone else. And there is an idea that some people think that that all property is bad. I personally don't know any anarchists who think that way, and many who think the reverse. In that, if you care for a thing, if you live here, and if you look after the space, you have every right to ask other people to respect your space. So, and again, it's not down to the dogs, it's down to the humans. But the point just simply being that, I can't see any way in which this is wrong. Now, is the knowledge base really, is it all the people who guide policy, who are heavily influenced by massive global corporations? Or is it the people, on the ground who experience what goes on and should have a say, I think, in their immediate... Arguably nobody knows better than you about your life. No expert can say, no, you really can't do that. If it's not imposing on anyone else, there's no earthly reason. Right, so William Blake, very much a dreamer, and the thing that these two, Diggers and Dreamers, have in common, Gerard Winstanley was, I believe, a religious man, but he was a Protestant, and William Blake, another religious man, but not in the same sense. And if anything, he was also a spiritual anarchist, because he didn't believe that anything, above or below, nothing was sort of, as it were, above anything else. No head higher or lower. This is the basic principle of cooperation, because as soon as you have a power relation, someone has power over another. Now, it may have been, going way back to sort of Celtic times, that our betters were considered actual servants, in that genuinely it was a bit of a poisoned chalice to be a king, for example, of a local sort of smallish sort of kingdom, because you would lead your troops into battle. You would have to be the strongest. In Ireland, at the Hill of Tara, there's this mound where kings were made, and might have been certain families that were favoured, but you still had to show that you had power and strength and courage and all the right stuff, and you had to have integrity, and you had to kind of outdo all the people who you looked after, and there had to be some sense that it was a mutual thing even then. Yeah, some of that kind of reminds me of what Edward Abbey says here, which is anarchism is not a romantic fable but a hard-headed realization based on 5,000 years of experience that we cannot entrust the management of our lives to kings, priests, politicians, generals and county commissioners. And another quote from Alexander Berkman: it is not bombs, disorder or chaos, it is not robbery and murder, it is not war of each against all, it is not a return to barbarism or to the wild state of man. Anarchism is the very opposite of all of that. And Jim Dodge: anarchy doesn't mean out of control, it means out of their control. Leo Tolstoy, another one: even if the absence of government really did mean anarchy in a negative, disorderly sense, which it doesn't, which is far from being the case, even then, no anarchical disorder could be worse than the position to which government has led humanity. He wrote a book as well called Government is Violence. Yeah. And if you think about, you and I are not allowed to be violent, which is quite right. But government is. Yeah. Government is allowed to kill men, women, and children. And one of the things that is really disgusting. All the sort of young kids that went abroad and Middle East, and the standard way of clearing a house of insurgents, somebody's home, was to kick the door down, throw in a grenade, and then survey, who you've actually killed. And there were so many young men that came back from that war absolutely in bits, because they had seen children in bits. Yeah. And so the destruction is not just it's also to the soldiers that we send to war. It's not just to the people that we disregard on the ground. Right, another one is by anarchist spirit I mean that deeply human sentiment which aims at the good of all, freedom and justice for all, solidarity and love among the people, which is not an exclusive characteristic only of self-declared anarchists, but inspires all people, have a generous heart and an open mind. And Gandhi, who in a sense kind of was an anarchist, in that although he was the leader of India for some time, he was not, apparently he never held any official position. But he said ideally a non-violent state will be ordered anarchy. The state is not the state is the best governed which is governed the least. So in other words, the more power is held with the people, and you should have, and nobody gave you, sort of power over yourself. It's innate. You have it, and you know if someone tries to boss you around, that even kids will say to you, "You're not the boss of me," and that's absolutely right. That's it. So that kind of feeling, which is a part of who we are, which is a very deep part of who we are, that we are kind of sovereign of ourselves. Then that is coupled with this thing, and it's not about necessarily brotherly love to do the right thing. If you're leaving a campsite, you've an excess of wood you haven't burnt up, and it's a campsite where you're allowed to do that, and you know that somebody's asked you about, oh, where'd you get, and you're leaving, and they're staying another night, you leave the wood there, and you even if you didn't like the person, you do that. Do you know what I mean? All these simple little things. So it's not even about love. It's just if you miss an opportunity to do the right thing, it makes everyone less.